Jem, one of the conspirators behind the Remno crisis, reveals that the unrest was part of a larger plan to spread chaos throughout the continent. However, Mia's actions have repeatedly disrupted his schemes. Guided by Lynsha, Mia's group locates Chancellor Donovan's prison. As memories of her previous execution resurface, Abel comforts Mia and reminds her that she is no longer alone. After Sion publicly exposes the conspiracy, most of the enemy agent surrenders. Just when victory seems assured, Mia fell into the basement and it is taken hostage by Jem. Thanks to a spilled bottle of shampoo, a series of funny accidents causes both Mia and Jem to slip repeatedly, culminating in Mia accidentally defeating the mastermind with a perfectly placed kick.
Damn it all.
Lined up before Mia and her friends were the tightly bound forms of the White Crowd members. Though it was likely that the only one for whom the rope was necessary was Jem, who continued to glare with hateful defiance at them. Mia regarded him silently for some time before turning to Abel.
Abel? And Sion too. I have a request. Could you spare the lives of these people?
Abel was hardly surprised to hear her plea. If anything, he was almost expecting it. I had a feeling that's what she was gonna ask for. The White Crows had conspired to overthrow an entire monarchy. Unlike the rest of the Winged Crows, who limited their activities to gathering intelligence, these radicals had mounted a direct attack. Sentencing them to death would be an act of mercy. Were they not foreign actors, all their family and kin might have very well be killed as punishment. Despite this, Mia pleaded for their lives. Under normal circumstances, there was no way he could grant her request. It should be impossible. And yet, he couldn't help but ponder. If it was the Princess of Tearmoon who asked, my father might listen. He was aware that the King of Remno had a soft spot for girls who asked him for things. As for the intelligent agents, it'll take some convincing, but the best concession I can wrangle out of him will probably be immediate banishment from the kingdom. The bigger problem is the locals who got involved in the revolutionary activities. The ones who just caught up in the fever might get away with a good lashing, but there's no way Lynsha and Lambert will come out of this in one piece. He glanced at Mia, wondering what she thought about the sibling circumstances. He wasn't sure what could be done, but he didn't feel particularly concerned either. Mia, he knew, had undoubtedly considered such issues already. Sion was of the same opinion. Having recently been lectured by Mia, he saw this as an extension of her ideals. She was trying to give these people a chance to make amends, to redeem themselves. Her actions thus far, in fact, were clear proof of this intention. Had the White Crow's action led to a bloody melee that claimed the lives of countless victims, it would be impossible to spare the lives of any of these people. Furthermore, the tensions would have flared between Remno and Sunkland, and war would be inevitable. Once it reached that point, there would be no turning back. But it didn't. There was only limited damage done, and the fallout should be minimal. At the very least, it shouldn't be bad enough to push Remno to declare war on an opponent the size of Sunkland. It would depend on how negotiations went, but they'd probably manage to, albeit barely, keep the pot from boiling over. Mia's request could be the final course of this long, harrowing meal, the culmination of all her efforts. I have no choice, there's nothing I can do. These are the words befitting only of the lips of those who'd made every attempt to effect change. Mia made those attempts. She did her utmost. Then, it is up to me to utilize every resource within my power to see her words turn into actions. As a fellow beneficiary of her redemptive mercy, it was the very least he could do. But in order to accomplish that, he would have to juggle a whole lot of very fragile interest. Assuming Remno settles for the more lenient penalty of banishment, Sunland would find it difficult to put them to death for fear of the optics. It would reek of a cover-up. If Prince Abel handles the persuading in Remno, the question is how I should deal with the Wingcrows upon their return.
Ha! Did I just hear you say you're not going to execute us? Am I losing my mind or are you losing yours? Or what? Are you planning to torture us or something? Go ahead. Do your worst. You won't get a word out of me.
Sion scowled. Something about the man's shrill, disdainful voice grated on his nerves. Torture, huh? I see the princess thinks he's still hiding something from us. Dion alone was thinking in a completely different direction. Having been briefed on certain topics before coming here, he had a unique take on the situation. Something about the Wingcrows didn't sit right with him. Specifically, their change into the White Crows. What was once a passive agency had morphed into a considerably more aggressive one, and the mind behind these metamorphoses was right there in front of him. This Jem guy, there's definitely something fishy about him. He didn't seem to fear torture. In fact, he dared them to do their worst. This wouldn't be a very surprising stance if they were dealing with someone who swore his loyalty to his nation. Spies in particular had to have a firm compass of allegiance in their hearts. What Dion heard in Jem's voice, however, wasn't mere loyalty. It was something else. If he had to put it in words, it would be fanatism. The kind of mad passion only true believers of some greater cause can muster. He glanced at Mia, forming his own hypothesis. Why was she asking for these men to be spared? It had to be because she sniffed out the toxin under the rug. The Wingcrows had gone rogue, but they hadn't done so alone. There was intent behind their corruption, a hand in the shadows, pushing them along. My dear princess can be uncannily sharp sometimes. Still, this guy is gonna be a tough nut to crack. I wonder what she's brewing in that noggin of hers. Or... maybe the big twist is that there's nothing brewing up there at all. I mean, he is not wrong. About the last part, at least. And all of you should have seen that coming. Mia had a wish. She made it, and that was as far as she got. She hadn't thought about how it was supposed to actually happen. Not to mention, even said wish was the result of her unwavering dedication to her Mia First policy. That's right. While Abel and Sion both believed beyond a shadow of doubt that Mia was benevolence incarnate, they were dead wrong. It obviously wasn't compassion that drove her to ask for the culprits to be spared. Mia was no saint, and she didn't exactly have a big heart either. If anything, it was on the small side and had an embarrassing tendency to squawk. No sir, like anyone else, she got angry when wronged, and right now, she was staring at a bunch of people who wronged her very badly. These were the very men whose actions had sent her to the guillotine the first time around. The last thing she wanted was to help them. Unlike Dion, however, she didn't suspect them of withholding information. So, why? You're probably asking. Why did she make that request? Well, it's because there was one particular concern that kept nagging at her, and said concern happened to be... What if the same thing happens to them? I mean, they got a second chance of life. Is it possible for them to get a second chance too? Having lived through time herself, she couldn't deny that there was a chance other people might do as well. If so, then what are the conditions necessary for that to happen? It wasn't clear, and since she didn't know for sure, she'd have to make assumptions based on her own experiences. For example, being killed on the same day at the same time in the same place might result in the same occurrence. Or perhaps... What if it had something to do with dying by the guillotine? Or even dying with regrets? If people involved in this conspiracy are executed, could
it happen to them too?
Thinking further ahead, if killing these men in the same fashion as she had been gave them a second chance at life, what would happen? Everything she'd done might be for naught. All the hard work she put in to change the course of history could be very well overturned.
No way! I'm not going back to the guillotine! I refuse!
It was a sentiment that had stuck with her since her time leap, as vivid now as it had been then. However, she was aware that something else had bloomed within her, something stronger, which she felt even more passionately about.
That's not the only reason, though. I don't want to go back because I like it here. This timeline, this... now.
She looked around at the people, at the scene. She tried to take it all in. It was a little overwhelming. There was her former enemy Sion. There was his attendant Kidwood. There was even the man who'd personally chop off her head, Sion. Next to him, Abel, who'd been a little more than a stranger. Tiona, whose help had allowed her to come this far. Chloe and Rafina. Whereas once she had no one by her side but Anne and Ludwig, she was now surrounded by an entire circle of friends. It was as if she'd stepped into an alternate world, one that welcomed her with open arms. She liked it here. She liked it a lot more than she thought possible, and that gave her pause. She realized that deep down, she was actually hoping that even Sion and Tiona would continue to stay by her side, and she wasn't sure how she felt about that.
Don't get the wrong idea, okay? It's not like I'm starting to like you people or anything, just so we're clear.
Whenever Mia wasn't comfortable with her own emotions, she turned to her tried and true coping mechanism, a tsundere outburst in her own head. Also, it should be mentioned that Dion was the one person for whom her opinion hadn't changed.
I'd rather not get any closer to him than necessary, to be honest.
There was one platform Mia stuck to, and it was anti-Dionism.
Abel, I know this will cause a great deal of trouble for you, but...
It sure will. But it's fine. Without you, this crisis would never have been resolved so peacefully. You did your part. Now let me do mine. I'll figure out a way to convince my father.
But if their lives are spared,
what do you plan to do with them? It was a very good question, one that Mia had no answer for. She gave Sion a clueless look and blinked a few times.
What am I gonna do with them?
Honestly, she didn't really care as long as they were left alive. Imprison them in Remno and they probably get killed. Imprison them in Sunkland and Remno will probably make a fuss.
I guess I can take them with me to Tearmoon, but...
Oh man, are you kids seriously going to let us leave? You sure are a bunch of regular saints, aren't you?
Mia scowled. His grin almost made her want to kick him again.
This guy's starting to get under my skin.
Unlike Sion, her annoyance resulted in a flash of inspiration. A brilliantly devious plan dawned on her. She was going to get some payback, and she knew exactly how she would go about it.
Yes, we are. In fact, we are so saintly that we're going to leave you in the care of the Holy Lady herself. You can spend 3 whole years being lectured by Miss Rafina herself, every single day. Now, doesn't that sound marvelous?
The idea was well received by Sion and Abel, and both of them nodded at her. Objectively speaking, it was actually a decent proposal. Beluga was actually the least contentious place to put these people. Dion muttered something about letting them off too easy, but even he spoke with more humor than hostility. The white crowd stared at Mia with baffled looks as though she just cracked a particularly dense joke. There was only one person whose reaction differed.
You wouldn't dare.
Jem alone screamed in protest, his eyes wide and his teeth bared. His face seemed a little paler than before. His once vexing confidence was gone, replaced by a fast-growing panic. Mia mirrored the disdainful grin he'd worn back at him.
My, how odd. Who was the one saying torture wasn't going to work? And who was the one saying I can go ahead and do my worst? Wasn't that you? Ha!
Despite Mia's triumphant laugh, she did fully understand the true implications of her proposal. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine that this decision of hers would shine the first beam of light into the dark closet of history and begin exposing the skeletons that lay hidden in the shadows. And so, the series of disturbances that shook Remno began heading toward resolution. The cloud of uncertainty that hung over the fates of Lambert and Lynsha cleared as well, as the two siblings, along with all the central members of the Revolutionary Army, were granted clemency. The credit for this belonged to Ludwig, who, having gone through his usual process of deducing Mia's intentions and actually arriving at the correct conclusion, had eagerly made his way to the royal capital to request their pardon. He'd make the case that faulting Remno's own people would, in a way, cast Songland in a more sympathetic light. Instead, focusing all the blame on Songland would allow them to extract more concessions during the negotiation. His logic had proven persuasive, and the king of Remno had taken his advice, thus concluding the incident, allowing the Mia brigade to return home. Upon arriving at the academy, Mia would face the despair that was midterms. That woeful story will have to be told another time.
This way, please, Sir Emissary.
Under secret orders from Mia, Ludwig Hegwid made his way to the king's castle in Remno. The final stroke was his responsibility. It was up to him to realize what Mia had been working toward all this time. An honest-to-good miracle. He was going to give the tumultuous story of this revolution a happy ending. He strode forward, his face set with determination. Behind him, Tiona Rudelbaum watched his advancing figure and sighed. Had things proceeded as expected, she'd be with Mia and others right now on their return trip. Instead, Tiona had asked them to go without her, opting instead to accompany Ludwig on his journey to Remno. Her reason?
I was useless.
An excruciatingly acute awareness of her own powerlessness. Motivated by a desire to repay Mia for her kindness, she joined her in her quest, swearing that she'd protect her at all cost. To her profound dismay, her resolve proved useless. When their cart was attacked, she couldn't do a thing to help. Afterward, they became separated, and she never did manage to accomplish anything of value. She didn't help Mia, not even once.
Princess Mia accomplished so much. Meanwhile, I was just baggage. Useless baggage.
That was why she came with Ludwig. She didn't know what she could do, what she wanted. No, she needed to do something. Otherwise, she'd have no choice but to go back. And the thought of returning as wordless as she'd left was simply too much to bear. However,
Is there really anything I can do here?
The doubt had hit hard and fast, and she was already on the verge of regretting her decision. Ludwig stood opposite of a group of Remno's top ministers. Behind them loomed the king of Remno, who looked down at them from his elevated throne. The scene would have been intimidating enough in its own right, but there was also a lot of shouting, angry shouting.
Full acquittal of all members of the Revolutionary Army? Do you take me for a fool?
The king's rebuttal was swift and unforgiving, and his ministers wasted no time adding their own psychopathic voices to the assault, practically yelling over each other to make themselves heard.
What rubbish! This is a waste of His Majesty's time. That's right. This is Remno's matter. It's none of your business. Do we speak to an emissary or a jester? Someone get rid of him. This is no place for idiots and madmen.
With the insults removed, the crux of their argument was actually valid. A foiled plan did not negate the attempt. These were still people who had sought to topple the current regime. Treason was no laughing matter, and an offense of this nature, irrespective of the actual damage done, would normally necessitate penalties of the highest order. Having all offenders as well as their families and kin put to death would hardly be excessive. The situation was arguably worsened by the fact that the Holy Principality of Beluga intervening in the matter meant Remno couldn't go after Songland's Windcrows, who were the main culprits. Without any other viable targets, their rage was inevitably funneled toward the only people they could actually get their hands on, Lambert and his fellow leaders of the Revolutionary Army. Their current stand was only natural. To reverse such an instinctive conclusion would require an argument founded firmly on logic, but
Ludwig hasn't said anything for a while.
Tuna knew why. It wouldn't matter even if he did. These people weren't here to listen. Logic held little sway over anger, and their opponents were fully under its influence. Ludwig could present a perfectly rational and preferable alternative, and it wouldn't change a thing, so he didn't. If speaking was futile, he simply wouldn't speak.
A lighter sentence can perhaps be considered for this Lynsha girl, who cooperated with Abel, but death is the only option for her brother and his accomplices.
The king's voice was stern and final. He showed no signs of heeding the words of an emissary who represented the wishes of his own son. Not only that, he grew ever more hostile as his anger shifted toward a new target.
Also, though you claim to represent Tearmoon, are you not a vassal to the princess? I take it then that this rebel you spout is her invention. Ha! I feel no need to listen to one who carries with him the stench of a fool.
The king's statement not only insulted Mia, but shifted the blame to her. That was not something Ludwig could bear to ignore. He glared at the king with the expression of one who'd finally surpassed the limits of their tolerance and was about to launch into a vehement rebuttal, only for Tiona to beat him to the punch.
Princess Mia is not a fool!
Tiona couldn't do anything. She knew better than anyone, but for all her inability to walk, she watched as Mia reached into the maw of despair and pulled out a miracle. Every detail of the heroic effort burned into her memory with vivid clarity. So she spoke, letting the scenes she witnessed flow freely from her heart to her lips.
Her Highness, she heard about the troubles in Remno, and in an effort to save her classmate Prince Abel from the hardship that had befallen him, journeyed to this kingdom with only a handful of companions. Once she arrived, she investigated the situation, learned the details, and realized that those who incited the revolution were victims as well and deserved sympathy. She strove to resolve the conflict without a single life being lost, and has so far succeeded. Who else could have accomplished such feat?
What nonsense! The king eyed Tiona with disdain. From where he sat, up on the throne of Remno, he saw little more than a girl whose only business should have been keeping her mouth shut. Instead, she flouted her position and vexed his ears with her wordless words and juvenile voice. Before the aged boulders of the Remno elite, she was but a roadside pebble, her appeal powerless against decades of fossilized thinking. However, while a pebble could not shatter rock, it could create a ripple across water. And what was a ripple if not a small wave? The force of which could at times chip away even the sturdiest of cliffs? What Tiona changed was not the mind of the Remno king. Where she found resonance was in the hearts of those who've been there with her, those whose ears have been graced in person by the words of the great wisdom of the Empire, Mia Tearmoon. Her ripple flowed through the room and struck a deep chord with the adamantine spear, Bernardo Virgil. As a man of tradition and custom, Bernardo embodied the image of the old-fashioned warrior. He had fondness for battlefield duels, detested trickery, and held ideas of cavalry in high regard. Therefore, he felt he had to speak up. To be moved by a young girl's words and betray her with silence was nothing short of disgraceful. Your Majesty, please lend an ear to the young lady's words. A princess of tender age and foreign blood took it upon herself to find a peaceful resolution to this incident. She exposed a nefarious plot that had been brewing within our borders, and she stopped the king's sword from drying the blood of the king's people. What she did was nothing less than spares us the tragedy of slaying our own king. Remno was a kingdom that revered martial prowess. It followed that when the kingdom's leading nine had something to say, even the king would listen. Bernardo, you... Hushed silence fell over the room at the king's hesitant response, as though the collision between the minister's anger and Tiona's outburst had spun into a great storm of emotion, and they all stood within its eye. Tension hit its peak, and everyone seemed to be holding their breath. Everyone but Ludwig, who'd been waiting for this exact moment. Your Majesty, and your graces and lordships, I implore you to listen to what I have to say, for the sake of the kingdom of Remno, to carefully consider what it is you should be doing at this point in time. To ask yourselves, what will best heal the wound this kingdom has sustained? And to consider with me both the benefits of convicting your own people for their crimes and not doing so. And thus began Ludwig's meticulously and painstakingly planned counterattack, which would provide him with enough leverage to move the calcified boulders of tradition that weighted down the hearts of the king and his ministers. The miraculous tale in Remno that began with the great wisdom of the Empire, Mia Tearmoon, was now entering its final chapter. This is it for this video. We will continue with the story of the Guillotine Princess on the next episode. This is Marco the Vera Mexican with Jobless Wings. Matanem!